We're just about to get started. Just want to have everybody take their seats.
The red light?
Yeah, I see the red light.
This is an excellent turnout. Appreciate everybody coming. I'm Brian Eaves. I'm the president of the Lambton Federation of Agriculture, and this is a joint session with the Lambton Federation, Kent Federation, and the Middlesex Federation of Agriculture. I'd like to acknowledge the rest of the Lambton delegates, or Lambton directors, I should say, that are here. George Dickinson is he's going to be our moderator for tonight. Gary Martin and Darcy Fuller. I know I've got Bert here somewhere. There he is. There's Bert. And then Micah. There she is. I just want to make the comment that if you, I think we had potential for you to pick up a paper and a piece and a pen and so on. If you have any questions you'd like to ask, just write them on a piece of paper, stick your hand in the air. There's 2 or 3 people around that will pick them up from you, and then we will come and we'll vet them. So, thanks very much. Jim?
I'd like to mimic some of the things that Brian has said. I'm Jim Brackett, Vice President of the Kent Federation of Agriculture. And I'd like to, on behalf of our Federation and Brad Snowblin, our President, who can't be here, welcome everybody here tonight. It is a great crowd. This is my second event. The last provincial election I was here, and this looks like almost double the crowd, so thank you very much for coming out. I'd like to introduce our directors that are here. Jay Cunningham, past president. Louis Rush, director of the KFA and director of the OFA. Bill Parks, put your hand up, Bill. Steve Fish, at the table over there. Ron Colbert, there at the corner. And we have Mark Houston. Mark, where are you? In the middle. So I'd like to thank everybody for coming out, and especially thank all of you for coming out. And I look forward to hearing some great questions and some great answers from our people running. Thank you.
I was going to wait to talk to the end, but they set a precedent, so Middlesex couldn't be left out. So I'm Patrick Berkeley, I'm president of Middlesex Federation. We've got a few directors. We're in the darker blue color shirts. Sorry, we didn't think about political things when we picked the shirts. So the directors we've got here, I know Dave Bolton's here. Jason O'Neill, our past president, is here. Brian Ferguson's here. What other directors did I miss? Did I miss anybody? Anyway, yeah, we're here. As was said, it's great to see a lot of people out here, and these things are always better when we've got more people to engage in the conversation. So thanks, we'll get to it.
Thanks, guys. And I will also introduce Teresa Van Ray and Louis Rush, who are both directors on the OFA board. So. Oh, okay. Sorry. Angela. I haven't met her before, so I didn't recognize her. So that's good. Okay. So those of you that know me, kind of like to keep things easy and loose. So hopefully tonight it's a night of sharing, and we have a chance for these people who have taken a big step out of their lives to give us an opportunity that many people don't have, and that's to elect who runs our government. So we want to give them all the respect and respect each way. So I'll lay some ground rules. Originally they're all going to give a 3-minute opening statement. They will start at this end and work that way. As the questions come in, there'll be a minute and a half for each candidate to answer their question. There's no rebuttal, and then the closing statements will be 2 minutes, and they will start. Kathleen, come this way. So we'll start with Catherine. In the end, we'll start with Kathy.
30 seconds will give you the warning.
and 5 seconds will give you the drop dead.
Okay, so we all set to go, then our first candidate is Catherine Schiller of the NDP.
And this is working? Yes?
Yes, it is.
Excellent. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank the Lambton-Kent-Middlesex Federations of Agriculture for organizing this all candidates meeting, and I'm very grateful for all of you coming out this evening. When I retired from a career that included a decade of credit union leadership in BC and 40 years of teaching and senior administration roles in post-secondary education, I followed my daughter Vanessa and her family to Alvinston because family is very important to me. That was the year the Ford government came to power, and through volunteer work in the community, I rapidly learned about the joys and the hardships of rural living. Every year since then, I've seen more and more people struggling. The costs of groceries and housing have skyrocketed and are hampering the ability of kids who've grown up here to stay here. Rural municipalities are suffering from cutbacks to provincial transfer payments. That's the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund. Cutbacks that began under the Liberals and accelerated under the PCs, while having to cover the rising costs of road maintenance, policing, and covering the operating deficit of critical community facilities like this arena. Social services delivered by the county have been reduced, both the benefits and the funding to deliver these services, while the need has grown exponentially. Healthcare is in jeopardy. Wait times are long, and now women's health is being shipped out of our riding from Strathroy Hospital to London and St. Thomas. Education funding is among the lowest of any province in the country, and child care spots are scarce. Farming is the #1 industry in this riding, but farmers are not getting the support they deserve. They put food on our tables and drive our economy. A strong agricultural sector means strong rural communities, which adds up to a stronger Ontario. The Ford government has failed farmers. The Ontario NDP has a plan to support the farming community. I'm running in this election for the NDP because Merritt Stiles, as the leader of the official opposition at Queen's Park, has successfully held the Ford government to account on several key issues. The Greenbelt scandal, Bill 124, which devastated healthcare and education workers, and because rural Ontario needs a stronger voice in the legislature. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Our next candidate is Steve Pinsino of the Progressive Conservative Party.
Thank you. Good evening, I'm Steve Pinsino, your Ontario Progressive Conservative candidate for Lambton-Kent-Middlesex. I'm a lifelong resident and business owner in the riding, and I've served on municipal council for the past 17 years. I know I'll bring a deep understanding of our region's unique needs and opportunities to the table at Queen's Park. But before we get started tonight, I'd like to thank our local federations of agriculture for hosting this event here. One of the things I'm most proud about running for Doug Ford and the Ontario PC government is our long-standing commitment to supporting farmers and supporting Ontario agriculture. While the Ontario Liberals neglected rural agriculture communities for over 15 years, the Ontario PC party is doing the exact opposite. We promised in 2018 we would increase the risk management program by $50 million, and we did just that. We promised to fight against the carbon tax, and we've done just that. A fight that will continue until we get rid of this unfair tax that punishes farmers and rural Ontarians once and for all. I'm particularly thankful for the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, who joined a couple weeks ago on calling the federal government to pause their latest 23% hike to the carbon tax. I'm proud to be running for the Ontario PC party here in Lambton-Kent-Middlesex, so I can continue to stand up for my constituents dealing with the cost of living challenges. I'm also proud to be running on our record of investing in rural education. We are building a new school in Lucan and Kamoka. I'm also proud to be running on our investments into our healthcare system, including $7.3 million into the Walsburg Hospital, rebuilding it, and $3.7 million into the Strathroy Hospital. And I'm proud to be running for a party that is attracting record levels of investment in jobs. Billions of dollars will be invested right here in Southwest Ontario. With your support, I look forward to building on the legacy of my predecessor, Monty McNaughton, and continuing to get it done here in Lambton-Kent-Middlesex. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Now we have Stephen Campbell of the None of the Above Party.
So the None of the Above Party, we're an independent group of representatives, so we're actually looking to have referendums for key issues like the carbon tax that Doug Ford proposed a month ago. Right now is a key opportunity with having by-elections that you could actually poll this district and have a referendum on the carbon tax and have a true say of what the people want, instead of spending money later, at a later date and time, to have another referendum where you go to the polls again. So it's about accountability to the MPPs that hasn't been in a long time. I'd also like to cut the MPPs' wages so that they are tied to the budget, so that if they don't meet the budget for Ontario on a regular basis, that they don't get it. Like, they could scale it back 25%, give them a 10% raise if they were to meet some obligation to the people that are running in this representative in this area. I'd like to thank all the representatives today that have brought us here and an all candidates debate. All over Ontario, this isn't the case, so it's nice to see rural Ontario still supporting and listening to people regardless of, maybe they don't have the same views that other people do. I think I have the same views as everybody here. But we're not getting representation of, in other districts. We're blocked, we're held out of debates. With Bill C-18 now, I can't even get a following on the internet. It's pretty hard for anybody to get their voice out to you at all today. So these main parties get their voice out, and Doug Ford actually said he was going to take away a 2% increase, a 2% that he gives to themselves. Instead, he gave it to 5%. You have to make 5% of the voting turnout. So even if we can't get in today, having people vote for you and getting you up to 5% so you can be on the same playing field as these other parties would greatly help. Doug Ford should have taken it away, like he promised in the last election. But these other people here, like, what is it? Cynthia and Keith, your word of mouth will go a long way if you like them tonight.
Thank you, Stephen. And now we'll have Cynthia Workman of the Ontario Party.
I hope. Thank you, Steve. I hope you all do like me tonight. I'm Cynthia Workman, and I'm representing the Ontario Party. We have some great policies, but first of all, I'd like to thank the Ontario Federation of Agriculture and the federations for putting this event on tonight. So all you folks could meet us, I want to tell you a little bit about myself. So I was born and raised in a place called Dawn Township. Some of you might know where that is. And then I went on to high school at good old LCCVI, and then I finished up at LKCS in Dresden, Ontario. So I'm a homegrown gal. I recently opened an office here as a registered psychotherapist and a Canadian certified addiction counselor in this great town of Alvinston, and I'm doing a contract on a First Nations reserve right now over in Middlesex. So I know this the three counties extremely well. I have an 82-year-old mother who likes to go for 8-hour drives And I can tell you during COVID, I was gonna write a book on the best back roads to cop a squat on, because, nothing was open during COVID. So it's been a great honor to grow up in this community and be able to share the values of Lambton-Kent-Middlesex with my kids. And they're values that I want to keep going in this province and in this country. I currently live in Thamesville, Ontario, which is not very far from a place called Dresden. And, the province is trying to shove a dump down their backs. And we don't want garbage from the big cities. They created the problems. We don't want it in our backyards. And I'll tell you, I have the bold courage to go to Queen's Park in Toronto and tell them that. And so I want you to know that the Ontario Party stands for family, values, freedom, fiscal responsibility, trust, and transparency. And we are here to serve the people of Ontario, not to tell you what we want you to do. We are here to listen, and we are here to serve. And I want you to know that the Ontario Party will bring back good old Canadian values to this province, to this counties, and I'll be here to serve you. I'll have boots in the barn and Cynthia on the farm. So let me tell you, Ontario Party's working for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. And now we have Keith Ben of the New Blue Party.
Yes, good evening, folks. My name is Keith Ben. I'm with the New Blue Party of Ontario. Is this thing working properly? Yeah. Okay, great. Bit of an introduction to my family history and myself. I have very deep roots in my hometown of Wallaceburg, where my paternal family moved in the 1880s, moving there from elsewhere in Ontario, where they had lived in farms since about 1793. And then my grandfather, having returned from World War I, founded the Ben Iron Foundry, some of you might have heard of, that my father and his brother grew to employ 300 to 400 people in the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s. I myself, I hold a doctoral degree in geology, or earth sciences, as they say these days, and I spent 17 years as a tenured academic at the University of Ottawa. In early 2008, I voluntarily left academia, and since then I've been working internationally in the minerals industry, holding management and executive level roles that have provided me with very valuable experience that I will be able to put to use for you as your MPP at Queen's Park. Last but certainly not least, I am the proud father of 2 successful adult children and so far 1 grandchild. Guiding principles for the New Blue Party and for myself as well. There are solid, fundamental conservative principles that include the free market, smaller government than we have now, lower taxes than we have now, and more generally, human freedom and dignity. By the free market, I mean one that is guided by the interactions between those who provide goods and services and labor and those who care to purchase the goods and services and labor that they sell, without the constant obsessive meddling by governments that we see these days, provincial and federal. Smaller government implies a government that's just big enough to perform its legitimate tasks efficiently and transparently, but does not, once again, needlessly meddle in the lives of its citizens. Principles of human freedom and dignity include, amongst other things, private property rights, and also the freedom of movement without having to show one's papers as if we lived in East Berlin in the 1970s. I'm sure you all recall Doug Ford asking the police to set up roadblocks and make us show our papers for driving down the street. That wasn't that long ago, folks. Those principles also preclude the coercion by government to inject any substances into my body that I don't want to inject into my body. And oh, by the way, just to wrap up, I hope you're all aware that there is no climate crisis. There is only a climate scam that's being perpetrated by our provincial and federal governments.
thank you, Keith. And now we have Kathy Burkhart-Jessen, the Liberal candidate.
Great, well, thank you very much for that, and I do want to echo the sentiments of thanking the Lambton, and Middlesex Federations of Agriculture for coming together and bringing us all here tonight. And I do want to thank all of you for coming out and spending a couple hours with us. You know, there's all sorts of demands on our time, and so for you to take the time out of your day and be here really does speak to the commitment that you have, not only for your community, but for our region, so thank you for that. Some of you may know me, and others don't. So in an effort to introduce myself, I'll share a little bit about myself. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a sister, and I'm a friend. And I was raised by a family where community service was an expectation. And I have followed my parents' example. I've been a community volunteer for as long as I can remember. And when I was raising my family, when my children were young, most of my activities centered around the activities they were involved in. In 2010, I was encouraged to run for council in Lambton-Kent-Middlesex, and I was successful and was the deputy mayor, and in 2014, I ran and became mayor. So I've been mayor of Lambton-Kent-Middlesex since 2014. I've been on Middlesex County Council since 2014, and I've been the warden of the county 3 times. You know, you can look me up online and do that infamous Google search. You can see the things that I've done in my community. I'm incredibly proud of the track record that I have. Make no mistake, I love what I do, and I love the service to community that I have been privileged to have as a municipal leader. But it is that service, and it is what I've seen in the last 6 years, the conversations that I've had with residents like you that have all come out, that have become increasingly disillusioned with this provincial government, how municipal business is harder to do under the leadership that we all are experiencing. And it is because of that that I have felt compelled to become the candidate for the Ontario Liberal Party. There is an opportunity here to build the party back, to listen, to build policy to residents just like you, so that you can see yourself represented by the Liberals. I have worked hard to build relationships to get things done, and I am keenly aware of the challenges and opportunities in front of you. I really do look forward to the discussion tonight between the 6 of us and hearing from all of you what your concerns are, because that is what will drive us to make some changes in this province. So thanks very much, and I really look forward to tonight.
Thank you, Kathy. And I should mention that you also do have a choice of a Green Party candidate who could not be with us, and Andriana Tilgner. I hope I said her name right. So now we'll move into the question part, and we're going to rotate through. We'll start with Catherine at this end, and every question will be a different person to start. So, and they have a minute and a half to answer the questions. So, if elected, what will your party do to recognize the ag sector as a key part of the solution in fighting climate change?
Thank you. We've all experienced some of the ravages of climate change over the last couple of years, and it's getting more intense. And farmers are going to bear the brunt of climate change as it accelerates. We need to work with farmers on this. And farmers, farmers are key, in fact, to our coming up with how we're going to deal with climate change, particularly out here. I'm sorry. farmers are our number one industry. We have to have a strong farming community. We have to invest in farmers, and we have to invest in rural communities to support farmers. And I'll get back to this a little bit more later. Thank you.
Steve?
Thank you. Climate change is all tied into the environment. The Ford government is making historic investments to protect our environment. We are investing $56 million into a resilient agriculture landscape program. That program is to plant more trees and establish more wetlands. The Ag Minister is working with the Minister of Energy to ensure that battery storage is not on prime agricultural land. Ontario is a world leader in electric vehicles. Locally, we're building a electric vehicle battery plant in St. Thomas, which is going to create 3,000 direct jobs and 30,000 indirect jobs. We have partnered with Tabasco in Hamilton for a $500 million investment to replace their coal furnaces with low emission electric furnaces. All of this has a positive impact on the environment, and that helps with our climate change.
Okay, Stephen?
Well, in St. Thomas, I bought the 1440 combine head from the man that they took the land from, and his land was prime land. They're also doing that in Wilmot right now. Waterloo is trying to take prime land in Wilmot right now. The land is pretty prime down in Windsor right now. They're all billion-dollar contracts from your climate change money. As for climate change, many of you have used ammonia in the past, and it was in your fields. We have production plants. We have green ammonia. We have blue ammonia. Blue ammonia is a little dirtier than regular ammonia. Ammonia can actually be run in your car, which is CO2 free, and we have the production facilities all throughout Canada, yet we're not even investing a single dime within that industry. We're putting it into these billion-dollar contracts, and they don't even have workers that are in our country. They're bringing outside workers. We didn't even get a single solitary worker in the Windsor plant. Like, how is that investing in Ontario, our future, or Canada, or even any of your kids don't even have a job from it? Will we even get jobs in the Windsor plant after this is all over?
Thank you, Stephen. Cynthia?
Well, I can tell you what the Ontario Party's not going to do. We're not going to make it harder for farmers to make a living. We're not going to regulate you to the point where you can't keep your farm going. We're going to work with farmers. We're going to work with farmers to come up with solutions, because you know what? Farmers care about the environment. Farmers care about their families. And so they're not going to do anything. I trust my fellow Canadians. I trust my fellow Lambton-Kent-Middlesex farmers. I grew up on a farm. I live between two pig farms right now. I trust them. I know that they have the best interests of the community at heart. And so we'll work with them to come up with sustainable ideas that's not going to bankrupt them. And I can tell you that I think what people are worried about right now is the farmers creating enough food for us to be able to eat, because I like to eat. I think everyone here likes to eat. And so we don't want to run our farmers out of business with climate regulations and a climate change that only a fortune teller could, predict whether really is going to happen the way they're telling us. So I want to work with farmers. I respect farmers, that they know what's best for their farms and for their communities. And that's what the Ontario Party believes.
Thank you, Cynthia. Keith?
Yes, I'd like to echo that I also believe, and the New Blue Party believes, that farmers know what's best for farming and what's best for their communities. And I would add, once again, there is no climate crisis. We're told ad nauseum that CO2 contributions from human activity to the atmosphere are driving climate change. As a PhD in earth sciences, I can tell you the climate has been changing ever since there's been a climate. The only thing that doesn't change with the climate is that it never stops changing. Furthermore, when CO2 represents 0.04% of the atmospheric gases, it is not driving climate change. When human contributions represent 3% of the 0.04% of the CO2 in the atmosphere, human activity, our contribution to the CO2 in the atmosphere is not driving the climate change. In fact, CO2 levels in the atmosphere react to heating and cooling of the planet. They don't drive it. This has been demonstrated time and time again. If you don't believe me, listen to Dr. John Clauser, the 2022 Nobel Prize winner for physics, who says there is no climate change. Therefore, there's no need for the kind of over-regulation that stifles farming and other activity, period.
Kathy?
So certainly, working directly with the agricultural community will be a priority of the Ontario Liberal Party and would be with me as your MPP. You know, I'm fortunate enough in Lambton-Kent-Middlesex to have relationships with the agricultural community, and I see firsthand already what is being done by the agricultural community to fight climate change. And for the most part, you don't get the praise that you deserve. It's often ignored. You're making great strides with technology and innovation, and we need to celebrate that. And it needs to be part of the discussions that and consultation that I would undertake and advocate on your behalf. But certainly that will be part of developing the Liberal policy, is having consultation so that we can develop an action plan to help farmers come up with mitigating plans to fight exactly what we're all facing is a climate crisis. But as I say, it's working directly with the agricultural community to build on what you are already doing on your own farms.
Thank you, Kathy. Okay, this is question number 2, and we'll start with Steve. What is your position about prime agricultural land being used for the proposed new Hydro One high voltage transmission line through Kent and Middlesex County?
Rest assured that primary agriculture is and always will be a priority for our government. We have a need for hydro going forward, and we do have to run our transmission lines. And what you have to do is you have to find the most direct route to make it feasible. We do take everything into consideration. Sometimes you are going to cross farms. Sometimes you're going to go through neighborhoods. But if we're going to keep our grid up, the world is going more electric. We do have to run the lines, and we have to find the most feasible path to take them down. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Stephen?
So these new lines are actually for the battery plant, and most of the power and all the power will be going towards it. We're also giving away a large percentage of our current grid on the current lines to the US at nothing the cost. So it's 0.03 cents, but we're all getting it at 16 cents. And then on top of the 16 cents, instead of us having, they should be having the same rate that we're having, which would decrease our rates, then our carbon tax wouldn't be as high. Then our carbon tax is a tax on the tax. But for the farmland, for this line, it's for that one plant and one plant only. They should be trying to get a route that's already on an existing route. There was old lines in place where the towers were before that were smaller. They weren't running as they were in the existing infrastructure. We should be trying to put it in the same land, in the same space that it was before, put up the bigger tower, but in existing locations that were there before, so we're not wasting more land. We're losing 319 acres per day in Ontario of agricultural land. It's been going on for the last 20 years. Like, that's phenomenal. It's like I forget, 2,300 acres that we've lost in the last 20 years. We're not getting the land back. You build these plants, we're not getting the land back, and it's no longer feasible for the land. You can't grow stuff on that contaminated land.
Thank you, Stephen. Cynthia?
Well, I think that, this is up to the communities that it's going to cross. This is a community issue. This is a farmland issue, which impacts farmers. And so they are the ones that need to have the final say on this. And if it's not feasible, and if the farmers don't agree, and the communities don't agree, then too bad. Because, governments can't come in and dictate to us. We are taxpaying citizens. And you know what? I have faith that they've got lots of ways to reroute these things. So I believe that it's up to the communities that are being impacted by this. They need to have the say. They need to tell their MPs and MPPs what they want. And the government needs to do what they say and what they want, because that's who represents you. And so I say whatever the communities and the landowners want, that's what you go with, because we're a democracy, not a dictatorship like some of the governments think. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Keith?
Yes, well, the New Blue Party and myself, we also believe that final decisions on where electrical, high-tension corridors should be placed, just like all sorts of other industrial decisions, have to depend very heavily on the wishes of the community and the well-being of the communities. But one point I want to make here is that this high-tension corridor thing, this reminds me a bit of that old saying about how generals are always fighting the last war. The future is going to be modular nuclear reactors. We all know that. And they're going to be coming online in just a few years. And with small modular nuclear reactors that are going to be placed around individual communities, we're not going to need so much of a great, big, huge regional grid to transmit our electricity, because it's going to be generated locally, or nearby, at least. So I'm wondering whether it's really necessary to build these new high-tension lines now, when we could be investing in the type of electrical generation of the future that's already here. The technology is here. We should be investing in the latest technology, installing it, and doing things that way. The footprint is much smaller, and it also shuts down a lot of opportunities for bad actors to hack into a big regional grid and cause millions of people to lose their electrical power. When you're relying on a local source of electricity, that's a heck of a lot harder for people to hack into.
Thank you, Keith.
Yeah.
I think.
So I don't think that there's going to be any sort of easy win for this. The reality is we do need to build the capacity, and the lines need to go somewhere. And it's got to be built in a way that is most efficient and least disruptive. And what really needs to be considered, I think, is how can existing lines be built upon? It's going to happen in some form or fashion, but fighting for a most efficient, least disruptive way would be the way that I would go about it. And certainly the consultation that has been going on, I was involved in a consultation with Ontario Hydro when I was warden last year. So they've been coming out to communities, they're having consultation. I would encourage you all to get involved. That's the only way that you're going to be able to have your say, is to be part of that consultation.
Thank you, Kathy. Catherine?
Thank you. The NDP always supported farmers and the maintenance of prime farmland. We don't want to lose prime farmland. Now, I will tell you straight up, I was unaware of this hydro corridor that is planned, so I don't want to, there's not much more I can say about that. I do know that we need to have far more in the way of consultation and discussion generally about how we are going to deal with climate change. Farming associations are working with all farmers, just as the Conservation Authority is and was before their funding was also cut by the Ontario government. So discussion, we need far more discussion. And no, I don't think everybody thinks that modular nuclear reactors are the answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Okay, for the third question, we're going to start with Stephen. If elected, will your party support and deliver increased livestock processing capacity to serve our domestic and international markets?
Okay, so yeah, our livestock markets have been decimated over the years. Our small butchers and everything have to make regulation codes where they close down all our small industries that we once depended on. It's all gone to one amalgamated big company, maybe 2-3 big companies that have all amalgamated pretty much. And probably the government's going to hand over money to them unless you vote for something different. These big parties give money to the big corporations, which is Tyson, Snyder's, which bought Maple. Really, they're all one company. There's no small regulation companies, and they're not helping the small guys out here anymore. Every single town in this community used to have a butcher shop, and it should be going back to the small ones because these big ones are getting contaminated. It goes out to the public for a long time. We're all getting poisoned by the time they call their listeria recalls on these big plants because they're putting too much stuff through it. If you had a small plant invested in everyone in our communities again, we would have less contamination. The smaller guys, when is the last time you've ever heard of a small guy having contamination within their industry?
Thank you, Stephen. Cynthia?
I'm going to get this microphone right by the end of the night. So I believe that we need to bring the jobs and the processing plants back to the communities. I know that it's been hard on a lot of the pig farms around because they don't have a lot of places to take their pigs, and I live between two of them, and I can tell you that if we don't start bringing things back the way they were, back to the communities, back to the areas, we're going to have trouble. We're concentrating too much on international reliance on processing and food supplies, and so we need to bring it back to Ontario, back to Canada, and start investing in our own farmers, in our own areas, so that we have jobs, so that we have food, and so we know what the processing plants will be like. They'll have regulations. And so that's where I stand. That's what I'll fight for, is to bring it back to the communities so that farmers have a place to count on. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Keith?
Well, it seems we have some agreement among several candidates on a common sense solution here. I really like the idea of local food hubs. And bringing this manufacturing, this processing of food back into the local communities. I can remember when I was young in Wallaceburg and we had a Libby's plant and a Heinz plant and we had the Dominion Sugar Factory. It creates jobs locally. As it was mentioned here just a moment ago, smaller footprints for these plants create less of an environmental impact. And for those who worry about burning too much diesel fuel and gasoline, well, maybe you don't have to transport the stuff for hours to get it processed and then transport it for hours to deliver it to retail outlets. You can start right in your home, right in the town, right in the middle of the agricultural area, and produce the food and process the food and package the food and then deliver it. I think that's brilliant. And this is a place where the Ontario government could invest some money. Some of that money that's being flushed down the toilet for EV plants, for instance, that I'll come back to in my closing remarks. What a disaster that is, but it's the Ford government. That's what we expect from them. One tiny little portion of that could be invested in helping local communities develop their food hubs and doing food processing locally, and I think that would be a brilliant idea.
Thank you, Keith. Kathy?
So the Ontario Liberal Party certainly is committed to growing and promoting the agri-food sector and expanding the markets than what they are today, and will do that by increasing the exportation of crops and agri-food and identifying new markets that we haven't been able to tap into. And we'll do that through consultation, through trade missions with partners from the agricultural community, working directly with those that are actually doing the work to know where and how to grow the markets, but the Liberal Party is committed to that growth.
Thank you, Kathy. Catherine?
The NDP is committed to supporting local farmers and in also growing the agri-food industry locally. So I think we're finding a bit of a common voice here, but definitely supporting the agri-food industry here. Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you. Livestock farming does have so many variables. It is a tough business to be in. We do need to support livestock and processing food facilities. The Ford government is helping commodities find new markets. The corn-fed beef and pork is in demand in Vietnam, and that was a result of a trade mission that our ag minister went over to. We are consulting all across Ontario to work and develop economic development strategies. Ontario is a net exporter of food, and we are going to do everything we can to increase production. We do realize that farming is important. Agriculture is the biggest business in Lambton-Kent-Middlesex, and we are going to do everything we can to help support them.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, this question, we're going to start with Cynthia. Sustainability is the word of the day. In that light, does it make sense to truck in raw resources to battery plants built on prime agricultural land instead of next to the mine where the resources are found? Is the future hydrogen?
No. And maybe. So no, it does not make sense to truck this stuff in. I don't know, it doesn't take much education to know that. My eldest son used to be a miner and driller all over Ontario and, well, all over Canada. And, you know, that kind of stuff can stay locally. I don't, where the mines are, I don't know why you would have to truck it. Aren't we supposed to be worried about carbon emissions? So, you know, that's a no, firm no. And I think that the sustainability issue, I mean, I think people are just worried about paying their bills, having some food, having a job, and hoping that this government doesn't, you know, bow down 100% to the Liberals. So maybe the answer, I'm not sure what the answer is, but for the latter part of the question. But I have heard that it's a good option and that we should explore it further. Thank you.
I couldn't hear the last part of that part of your question about what is it that they're trucking from the mines? I'm very interested, working in the mining industry, to find out what's being trucked from the mines here.
Okay. I will read the question again, and I don't write the questions, I just read. Sustainability is the word of the day. In that light, does it make sense to truck in raw resources to battery plants built on prime agricultural land instead of next to the mines where the resources are found? The second part of the question is the future hydrogen?
I'll answer the second part first. The future might be partially hydrogen. I don't see any reason why hydrogen can't seek to have its place in the market as well. And if it produces something that people want and that's useful and that's efficient, sure, why not? But maybe it won't. We'll have to wait and see. That's what the free market does. With regards to trucking the raw materials to the battery plants, the big problem here is, well, actually, that's a really good question. And placing the battery plants closer to the mines might be a wise thing to do. However, the gigantic elephant in the room here, that those of us who work in the minerals industry know, is that over the course of the next 1 to 2 decades, there's no way in the world that we are going to mine and produce enough copper and nickel and cobalt and lithium and rare earth elements to do the energy transition that is being promised to us, not on the time scale of 1 or 2 or even 3 decades. It is impossible. It's been demonstrated and said out loud by a lot of very high-level mining people. The only way you will ever get enough copper, for instance, or even close to it, is to at least double the price of copper. If you double the price of copper and nickel and cobalt, you double the price of all of the products that you make with them. So if you think a $75,000 EV is bad, wait till you have to buy one for $150,000. It's a scam.
Thank you, Keith. Kathy?
So there's no question Ontario has a wealth of resources, and we're so fortunate to be able to have them and to be able to benefit from what they can produce. And of course, the Ring of Fire is on top of just so many discussions as these EV plants and battery plants are being built right across the province. But what we have to do is we have to collectively look at how these resources are being moved, and we do have to look and to see if those communities in the Ring of Fire can actually sustain a plant being there, so that we aren't just trucking these raw resources across the province. There has to be a supply chain plan, and there has to be investment into infrastructure to make sure that we aren't constantly going to agricultural lands and taking them out of production for other industry. There has to be other ways to take the resources out of the land and deal with that closer to where the resources are. And certainly the Ontario Liberal government would do that.
Thank you, Kathy. Catherine?
There are several questions in that question, actually. And it seems to me one of them is, where should these battery plants be located? Prime farmland is not a good choice. But whether you locate those battery plants here or up in the Ring of Fire, something is going to get transported there. So I don't think we need to worry about which or what, or any more than anything else. Is the future hydrogen? I think we're looking at alternative fuels, greener fuels. Hydrogen is certainly one thing that is being tested out. The jury is out on that, just as the jury is out on electrical vehicles. We don't really know. So I think there's a lot we need to learn. And I don't think you can just say, we don't want this, we don't need this. However, there has to be a lot more discussion. But the primary thing is, let's stop paving over prime farmland.
Thank you, Catherine. Steve?
Ford government building roads to get the minerals out of the ring of fire up there. They're in the process of doing that now. The problem with putting the plant, or where you put the plant, is you have to be near a labor force. It requires a lot of employees. And I don't think putting it up by the mines, I don't know that you're going to be able to get your labor force there. We are concerned with the environment, which is why we're promoting the electric vehicles and putting them in place. As far as hydrogen, who knows? Nobody has a crystal ball. But honestly, at the end of the day, 20 years from now, it could be something we haven't even thought of. But right now, electric vehicles seem to be the most logical way to go, and that is the route that the Ford government's taking.
Thank you, Steve. Stephen?
So it was either World War I or World War II, Germany actually switched all their buses in the city over to ammonia. In 1977, the University of Michigan also switched and did prototypes on ammonia. The leader of my party, Greg Vesna, in 1984, converted a Chevy Impala over to ammonia. In 2010, he converted a Chevy truck, diesel truck, over to ammonia. He's currently working with the trucking industry and doing a major project with a major trucking corporation on 4 to 6 of their trucks on ammonia to cut down on their fuel costs because of these carbon taxes. Ammonia is CO2 free, so I don't know if hydrogen is the option we want to go with. BMW, Toyota, and they're all developing it, and it could come out, but you have to actually keep the hydrogen at minus 265 degrees or it can become volatile. So I don't know how they're going to keep it, the hydrogen right for your combustion engine. The combustion engine will work, but ammonia can run on it, propane, other resources. Actually, there's a lot of other resources, Brown's gas, that all can be running in your engine instead of the ones that were being forced upon us with these carbon taxes and carbon schemes.
Thank you, Stephen. Now we'll go on to the fifth question, and we'll start with this question with Keith. Since CN and CP are crown corporations, how do you plan to ensure these corporations comply with the Drainage Act and allow agriculture rail crossings?
Well, that's I'm not too clear, honestly, I'll be straight up here. I'm not too clear on the role of the provincial government versus the federal government when we're dealing with crown corporations. But simply for having railway crossings that respect agricultural land, I guess is what and allow people to get from one field to another, for instance, and that sort of thing. I think that's just a Ministry of Transportation regulation that would just have to be put in place to make sure that they do that. I don't see any complication with that at all. It would require, of course, a government that cared, but I think that most of the candidates up here this evening would probably be in favor of just having, well, they'll have to speak for themselves, but I certainly would be in favor of simply passing legislation if necessary, or simply changing regulations that are enforced by the Ministry of Transport to ensure that these things are built. That's all. It sounds like, I think it's a pretty simple solution to come to put into action. Excuse me.
Thank you, Keith. Kathy?
So unfortunately, it's not simple because CN and CP are crown corporations. This is federal jurisdiction. And I've had the opportunity with my municipal hat on to represent communities in Middlesex County on an economic development board that I sit on, SCORE, South Central Ontario Regional Economic Development Corporation. And we have advocated on behalf of municipalities to the province. The province has to hold the federal government to account to make sure that these drainage issues that so many municipalities in rural Ontario are facing. These are lost dollars. There is work and maintenance that is not being done by CN and CP, and nobody is holding their feet to the fire. The province has a role to play. They're the ones that can actually entice the federal government to do something and to move on this. And I'm proud to say that I have been a loud advocate in Middlesex County for this. And I have presented on numerous occasions to various provincial ministries on behalf of the municipalities in Middlesex, and I would continue to do that for Lambton-Kent-Middlesex, and I would be that voice in Ontario to hold the federal government and get something done with the CNCP, because enough is enough.
Thank you, Kathy. Catherine?
Drainage is this on? Yeah. Drainage is hugely important to farmland here in Lambton-Kent-Middlesex. And of course, CN and CP need to be held to account, and we don't need to have anything that will in any way obstruct or hurt the drainage system that is there. We have a good act. We've got good regulation there. We need to simply make sure that it's enforced.
Thank you, Catherine. Steve?
Thank you. In my 17 years with Chatham-Kent Council, this has come across the table so many times I can't count it. And it is a challenge. Farming, one of the key issues in farming is good drainage. And it is one of the most important aspects. It is a federal jurisdiction. I would be in favor of the Ontario government holding the federal Liberals to the fire to address this, because it does need to be addressed. And like I said, over my years of being around, dealing with the Drainage Board directly, it's a serious problem. Anyway, I would like to see the federal government come to the plate and get this problem fixed.
Thanks. Okay, I'll read it. It's summarized. Since CN and CP are crown corporations, how do you plan to ensure these corporations comply with the Drainage Act and allow agricultural rail crossings?
Yeah, so a lot of the things our corporations, our governments aren't, our MPs, our MPPs, our regulations, they're not being met. That's where we need to elect better officials that will follow the laws, the rules that we put in place. Oftentimes they go by the wayside, and I think it falls back on us electing better officials that will follow the rules and the things that we want as constituents.
Thank you, Stephen. Cynthia?
Well, I think that the first thing we gotta do is get a provincial government that's gonna stand up to these feds, because this is just one of many issues that the federal government likes to ignore. You know, Justin Trudeau feels that he's bored. Well, maybe he needs to start doing his job. If you and I own those railroad crossings, they sure would be on us to fix them. They sure would be on us to fix the drainage. So I think the province of Ontario, we're a big province and we got a lot of power. We got a lot of people. We can stand up to the feds on this issue and many more. And what we can do is we can say, you want to withhold payments on us for certain things, well, maybe we're going to withhold payments on you until you fix this issue that we're having. Farmers are the backbone. Farmland is what we need to feed the people. They have to understand that this can't go on. They have responsibilities and they pick and choose what they're going to look after. The province of Ontario needs to stand up. We need a leader who's going to fight for Ontario on the national stage. We need to be more conservative like the rest of the places like Alberta and Saskatchewan who are standing up and gaining back their autonomy as a province.
Here, here.
Thank you, Cynthia. Okay, this is the sixth question, and we're gonna start with Kathy this time. I should have said, I should have asked them at first, I hope they're okay with me going by first name. So I'm
Absolutely.
not a very formal person, so. What is your party's position on developing an Ontario-built carbon pricing system as opposed to accepting the federal system?
So recently, the new leader of the Ontario Liberal Party, Bonnie Crombie, has come out and been very defiant and very specific that there will be no retail carbon pricing under her leadership. There will be no carbon pricing on eating, heating, and driving. And I've pressed her on exactly what that means, and she has assured me that any sort of pricing that she brings in will not affect the agricultural community. She believes that how the carbon pricing is at the federal level is not fair to the communities that I represent, that you live in, and that the carbon pricing she will bring in will not affect farmers' day-to-day businesses. And there will be no carbon pricing on heating, eating, and driving.
Thank you, Kathy. Catherine?
Ontarians have a carbon tax today only because Ford canceled the cap and trade program that was in place. The NDP has never, ever supported a carbon tax on farms, food production, and individual consumers. An Ontario-built carbon, there was one. Now there is one by default. It's not carbon pricing, it's a carbon tax. The, I don't know why I keep hanging out here, but I do. I'm sorry about that. So a built-in Ontario carbon pricing system would be more like a cap and trade. And yes, we would support that. The NDP would support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. And I'll just ask the audience to please refrain from clapping in the middle of one of the candidates' presentation because the clock is ticking and that could allow a change in their time. So, and Steve?
All right, thank you. Ford government has stated there will be no carbon tax in Ontario without a vote of the people. They are actively fighting the federal carbon tax. We know the impact it is having on farmers and the agriculture industry. The recent 23% hike is really making it tough on the bottom line. This translates to higher prices at the grocery store, to gas pumps, and heating your home. In my conversations with farmers, going to all the farm shows that I went to in the last couple of months, I spoke to a farmer who said it cost $30,000 more to dry his crops than it did a year ago. That's unacceptable. This is why we're going to continue to fight to stop this carbon tax. I don't think the federal Liberal government really understands how much damage this tax is doing to rural Ontario and the agricultural community. The Ford government is the only party that is fighting the carbon tax because we know it is affecting farming. I would honestly like to know where Kathy and the Ontario Liberal Party are going to be when we have to fight their Liberal counterparts to have this tax totally removed. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Stephen?
So I'm totally against carbon taxes in any way, shape, or form. We have an oil reserve that's the third largest in the world. Irving Oil spends $8 billion a year getting oil from outside of our country. We should be getting our oil to market. The money that we generate could go towards incentives and towards our own people in our own country to put in place brown gas, hydrogen, ammonia, all of the other things that are already in our country that we could do ourselves and support our own local economies all over the country, not some foreign entity from lithium with lithium. I'm pretty sure they're putting the plants over in these areas by water ports because we're not going to be having the lithium from our country. The coal mines will get some work out of that, but the lithium ion is a toxic leaching field. I'm pretty sure we don't have any in Ontario, and that's not something that's going to help us in any way. The carbon taxes in 1992, home heating only had one tax. Now there's two. Now we have four. We're up to 46% of our wages are gone to taxation. Anything above 25% of our taxation is unacceptable from any level. Of all levels of our government should not exceed 25%. We should be getting our materials to market, getting the money, and the money should be invested back in Canadians.
Thank you, Stephen. Cynthia?
So what I'd like to say is, you know, if the Ford government is fighting back against the feds, they need to fight harder. We need to take back the autonomy and sovereignty of this province and not be wishy-washy to the ideology, radical ideology of this climate change stuff. And the truth of the matter is that what is most important right now is that people can't afford to eat. People can't afford to pay their bills. People are losing their homes. And we have to stand up to this. Carbon taxing is not our priority right now. And I can say that as a mother of three, as a single mom who has to support her family. It's almost impossible. So yes, the Ontario Party is not in favor of carbon taxing. And in fact, we have seen people, the countries that give incentives to people to do the carbon capture technology, it works better. This taxation, this carbon taxing, it's a money scam. And we all know it. And so we have to fight back. We have to vote. We have to vote. And we have to show up at the polls and show the governments in power that we're not going to take it anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Keith?
Yeah, I fully agree, and you have to vote for parties other than the legacy parties who have all been cramming this fairy tale of CO2 driving catastrophic climate change down our throats. It is a fairy tale. Carbon taxing, which presumably means taxing CO2, not carbon. Let's try to get the chemical formula right, folks. CO2 is a farce. And the whole climate scam is the sort of thing that's used to ram things through that otherwise nobody would put up with. The Liberal Party of Ontario, for instance, that's entirely responsible for building hundreds of industrial wind turbines in Chatham-Kent that have massively disrupted people's domestic water supply because they depend on their private water wells. And they did that because it was green. If you were going to build a mine in a place like that, I can tell you, you wouldn't get it done without a massively complex and complete environmental assessment. Whereas these wind turbines that the Liberals ran through, because it was labeled green, just go out and build it, don't worry about it. And now you have hundreds of households whose water is contaminated with heavy metals-laden sediments. Let's forget about this fairy tale about human-induced climate change. Let's get rid of these taxes that are justified in that way, and let people have more money in their pockets to live their lives.
Thank you, Keith. Okay, for our next question, we'll start with Catherine again. What is your party's position on running budget deficits, yet don't ensure our ag risk management programs are properly funded?
Could you read it? I didn't get the second part.
I'll just read the whole thing. What is your party's position on running budget deficits, yet don't ensure our agriculture risk management programs are properly funded?
Good question. I'll just start with saying that a study of financial responsibility of various of the major parties across Canada was done in 2015, and it showed that actually the NDP governments were the most financially responsible. But to talk about risk management, the 50 million that the PCs have promised or are putting into the risk management program is not enough. And it's because of the uncertainty that has been caused by climate change. If we're going to have a predictable, bankable system at the backs of farmers, then we need to double that amount. And that's what the NDP would do.
Thank you, Catherine. Steve?
Thank you. 15 years the Liberal government were in power. They did nothing with the risk management program. The Ford government made a promise in 2018 that they would increase the funding, and they did that very thing. They put $50 million into it in 2022, or 2020, sorry. That is why this government knows the importance of agriculture to our economy, and that is why they're doing that. And they monitor this regularly. They stay in touch with the agricultural groups to see, to make sure they know where they're at. And at some point in time, in the future, that there is a possibility that that can be looked at again. We're doing lots of things, though. We're improving infrastructure locally, 401, to make it, widening it between London and Tilbury to make it more efficient. But we do know the biggest risk is the carbon tax, and we just had that discussion. And but the risk management, we are the ones that actually added 50 million to it, and we are staying in touch with the agriculture community to know where we're at with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Stephen?
Back to my earlier comments tonight, I think MPPs should be responsible for actually budgeting and budgeting the Ontario budget every single solitary year. So whether they can actually give out money and make false promises like they do tonight, they never make and follow through with anything. You have to balance the budget because our land taxes right now, a 50-acre farm used to be $1,000 maybe 20 years ago. It's up to 4,000 and 4,000 or 5,000. I don't even know how high it is right now for a 50-acre farm. It's about $4,000, $5,000. Every year that we don't balance the budget and we don't do anything about it, we go further into debt. Families have to sell off like you go out for retirement, you have to sell off your farm because it doesn't even make enough money to pay off your yearly. You can't even live off of it right now, and the sale of your farm, you'll benefit quite a bit. But we need to balance budgets in every single avenue that we have, and it's working together with our communities that we can get through this, and it's different representation, and the only way we're gonna get representation that's different is you have to talk about these people and stop voting the legacy parties.
Thank you, Stephen. Cynthia?
So, in my household, I can't print any money. And, if the bank account says the money's not there, then I can't spend it. So it would be nice if our governments in power would learn that. I learned it at Don Central School, thank you very much. So I think the answer to this question is, we have to balance budgets. We don't want to leave this as an inheritance for our children and grandchildren and generations to come, and we're already in trouble. And so the balanced budgets have to come from fiscal responsibility. And the fiscal responsibility needs to come with some wisdom by our leaders. That being said, if you have good finance ministers, if you have a good, solid understanding of finance, business, the economy, and what people need, there shouldn't be any problems funding risk management. In fact, if we trim the fat off the bureaucrats and the lobbyists, I think that we'll have plenty to balance the budget and take care of the people of Ontario, take care of the people of Lambton-Kent-Middlesex, and that is what the Ontario Party stands for, and that's what I stand for.
Thank you, Cynthia. Keith?
Clearly, we don't have a problem with our governments not collecting enough taxes from us. We have a problem with our governments not being fiscally responsible or intelligent in the way that they manage our money. Having held executive level roles in several corporations where I've been responsible annually for planning budgets of up to $50 million a year, overseeing how they're spent, and then standing up in a boardroom afterwards and explaining how the money was spent and why we didn't get any results or we did get great results, I know something about responsibility for spending other people's money. And that's something that I will take with me to Queen's Park when you elect me, and I'll be talking about that probably endlessly. But another thing I'll add here, this is a good moment to slip this in. One thing that Ontario needs to do is to exercise more provincial sovereignty. And one aspect of that is that Ontario should be collecting, I would say, at least 80% of all of the taxes that are levied in Ontario directly into Ontario's coffers, rather than having most of the income taxes, for instance, collected by the federal government. The money then gets laundered through Ottawa, Lord knows what happens to it, and then we have to get on bended knee to ask for a health transfer at the end of the year to get our own money back. It's unacceptable.
Thank you, Keith. Kathy?
So under the new leadership that the Ontario Liberal Party is experiencing, we are developing policy each and every day, and we have committed, the Ontario Liberal Party has committed to enhancing the risk management program so that Ontario's agricultural sector has the tools to deal with the challenges that you are all facing. And that is a commitment that Bonnie Crombie has made. She made that in her leadership run, and she has made that as she's developing her policy. When it comes to fiscal responsibility, right now the Ontario Liberal Party is we're just putting together our team, and we're putting together a team of experts that will come together and present a fiscal plan to Ontarians that will be responsible, and it will be an answer to this present government's approach to how they are managing money. I don't think it should go unmentioned that under this leadership that we are experiencing, the deficit has ballooned to $91.7 billion, and that is the largest in under any Ontario government leadership.
Thank you, Kathy. Okay, this next question will be, I'm told, the second last question because Teresa's stomach's growling and she can see these pies. Just the way it has to be, so. What will your, this question starts with C. What will your party do to ensure legislation that affects agriculture are made based on sound science, and not simply on the whims of opinion polling?
One thing the Ford government does have is a good relationship, working relationship with the agricultural community. We are forever out into the rural areas, Lambton-Kent-Middlesex, and we are talking to people. Our ag minister is out, and we realize that legislation does affect farming in a lot of ways. And before legislation goes into place, We make sure we do all of our due diligence, we do our homework, we talk to the right people, we talk to the different organizations, and we do what we can that makes sense for everybody. We definitely don't want to do anything that's going to damage agriculture, simply because, well, here in Lambton-Kent-Middlesex, agriculture is the biggest industry we have. And agriculture is a big deal to Ontario's economy. And so before any legislation goes in, we want to make sure we deal with the proper people. We want to make sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. And we do what's in the best interest for farming and the agriculture.
Thank you, Steve. Stephen?
So, I would always consult with the farmers first. These ag ministers, a lot, Kathleen Wynne was our ag minister. I don't think she knows anything about agriculture. She rode a tractor at the plowing match. But our GDP in Canada for agricultural is 7.9%. In our region in Ontario, it's only 1.9. Why are we so down compared? Why are they not investing back into the farming communities? We have all our mills, we're bought up by a Quebec corporation and shut down. We talk about green and travel time. I have to now spend another 2 hours on the road to take my grain to market instead of the 10-minute away one that used to be Melbourne. A lot of you have wagons in the field sitting there. Your grain could go bad while you're waiting for a truck to transport it somewhere else. Our pigs are going over to Hamilton, where we have protesters blocking it, and our truckers are all lined up all day long, sitting for an extra 5 hours to get into a processing plant that we don't have one down here. Why are they not investing in our rural area? And our PC government has been running our rural area for a long time. We've had representation in the government. There's no excuse that they have not been supporting us up until this point. And a lot of people, Monty has been supporting us very, very well, our incumbent, but his hands have been tied in recent years.
Cynthia?
Didn't catch the last part. Could you read that again? Are we allowed?
I'll read the whole question. What will your party do to ensure legislation that affects agriculture is made based on sound science and not simply on the whims of opinion polling?
Oh, well, my party, the Ontario Party, we listen to people. We listen to farmers. We listen to the people that it impacts. We don't let some person in Toronto who knows nothing about Lambton-Kent-Middlesex make decisions for the people of Lambton-Kent-Middlesex. So like I said, if I'm elected to this great 3 counties, you will see boots in the barn and Cynthia on the farm. And what I mean by that is the Ontario Party doesn't sit in offices in Toronto, Ottawa, wherever. What we do is we go to the people, we hear what they're saying, and we also know, and I can tell you as being a psychotherapist, science can be skewed to whatever way the politicians want it to go. And so we need legit science. And we got some good ag schools out in Ridgetown that I believe, there's generations of farm boys and farm girls that go there. And so we need to trust the farmers, we need to trust the communities where the farms are, and we need to really look at the evidence behind the science that we're trusting. And so legislation that the Ontario Party will always be in favor of the farmer, because we know the farmer is the backbone of Ontario, and it's certainly the backbone of Lambton-Kent-Middlesex.
Thank you, Cynthia. Keith?
Yeah, there's sort of 2 questions in one there. I'll try to address both of them quickly here in a minute and a half. The first one is regarding the science, and believe me, as a former university academic, I know that since many university academics are funded by government, they tend to give governments the answers that they want. So yeah, but there are ways around that. If you manage it properly, you can get the proper science done and get the real facts. So that's one thing that's one reason why it might be a good idea to elect some people to the Legislative Assembly of Ontario who have some insight on how research is done. The other big question there was, why do governments bend to the whim of opinion polls? And I think the problem there is that you have a lot of leaders in government who are led by the legacy party hierarchy, who are themselves led by public opinion polls. A real leader isn't led by public opinion polls. A real leader leads the public opinion polls. A real leader does the right thing, the people are happy, and therefore the public opinion polls support that leader. But we don't have leadership like that in Ontario, and I don't think we have for a long time. Perhaps Mike Harris might have been the last premier we had who was along those lines. But ever since then, the McGinty's, the Wynns, the Fords, they just bend to the whims of the public opinion polls, and they have no spine.
Kathy?
I think the question is very interesting in that I think we've all witnessed how this government does govern on the whims of whatever is happening on a day-to-day basis. And we've had to see them claw back on so many decisions that they have made over the last 6 years. As a mayor, I've seen direct consultation be taken away, not only from municipalities, but from residents. And so to develop an agricultural policy, agricultural legislation, it means talking directly to those that are working in that business, in that sector, in that industry, and that's talking to you as agricultural farmers, agricultural business people. And that's what the Ontario Liberal Party would do, is have direct consultation. There is no promise that this government's going to continue with that. As late as yesterday, with their new housing bill, we have seen that legislation that they bring continues to promise that they will paper over agricultural land. And that is something that the Ontario Liberal Party will not do.
Thank you, Kathy. Catherine?
Thank you. Sound science. There's a lot that is being done in terms of research at universities in this province and nationally and internationally that provide some consensus on various topics. Legislation that would affect agriculture here should depend on the expertise of agricultural researchers, not on the whims of public opinion. And I agree that the Ford government has been rather open to whims of public opinion. But let's look at the ways in which the Ford government looked at farmland in the Greenbelt. They were willing to take out various tracts and sell it off to developers. And then they backtracked. They backtracked because they didn't need it for what they said they needed it for. They didn't need it to build housing. There was plenty of public land there that would not have required that. I think I'm out of time.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Okay, this is our last question. How does your party intend to support young farmers and new entrants? And we're going to start with Stephen.
I don't even know how to help young farmers. I don't even think young farmers can even get into the market today. Land prices in Ontario are at $250,000, $300,000. To farm a farm in Ontario today, after 20 years, I could maybe make $400,000 on that land over that time. That would even repay a wage for myself. On that 50-acre farm, you could get $1.5 million right now. So unless the government's giving you $1 million loan-free, interest-free, there's really no new farmers coming into the market. It's going to be legacy farmers buying up more land unless we have a huge market shift. A lot of the problem right now is housing, land, and unless the federal government cuts immigration into our country and our house prices go back down and our land prices go back down, young farmers are not getting into this business. Saskatchewan right now, you can buy land at $3,000 an acre. If you're a young farmer, you might want to go to Saskatchewan.
Thanks, Stephen. Cynthia?
So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to give the young farmers hope. And we're going to do that by balancing the budget, lowering inflation, getting rid of the carbon tax that's killing the farmers, especially in this area. And then we're going to make incentives for them to do business wiser, be innovative. We're going to allow them to do their farming the good old-fashioned way, the way they were raised, the way that Lambton-Kent-Middlesex farmers have always done it, and we're not going to regulate the hell out of them. We're going to make it so that farmers can make a living again, and that governments are going to get out of the farming industry's face, because I can tell you, the pig farms, they're being regulated to death around. I mean, they come up with new regulations, new laws every time you turn around. There's something else that's got to be fixed. There's got to be something else to do with the crops. So we're going to cut back government bureaucracy, and we're going to make it easier for farmers to do the job that they love to do, that they do for the public so that we can eat, and we trust them. And I'll tell you, in Lambton-Kent-Middlesex, I trust my fellow community members to do what's best for their families and for their communities, and that's going to bring hope to the young ones.
Thank you, Cynthia. Keith?
Yeah, to summarize, I would say the best thing that government can do for farmers, including young farmers and entrant farmers, new entrants, one of the best things government can do for them is to get out of their way. As was just mentioned here a minute ago, that's got to involve reducing regulations, reducing taxes, making it less expensive to farm, letting people just do their job and make a living. And that also, I think, leads to another question of the size of our government, because one of the reasons that not only farming, but certainly farming, are over-regulated is because we have a government that's too big. We have a giant gray blob of a viscosity, there's my scientific term coming in, a giant gray blob of a bureaucracy that is completely out of touch with the people of Ontario, and they just make regulations because that's what they do. They feel that's their job, and if they're not making new regulations, they feel as if they're not doing their job. And I think we really need to reduce the size. We need to reduce the size of our government, pare back on the regulations, pare back on the taxes, have a free market economy again, like I mentioned in my introductory remarks. We have to get back to common sense conservatism. That's what it amounts to.
Thank you, Keith. Kathy?
Well, certainly, we all want to see the future of farming continue and to be supportive, and we want to see the next generation continue in the footsteps of family farms that Lambton-Kent-Middlesex and the province of Ontario has been so proud to support over generation, over generation, over generation. So to a certain extent, actually, I will agree with what you said about government getting out of the way of you doing your business. We can't be always over-regulating and stepping in where we don't belong. But one of the things is that we can do is provide tools so that there can be a framework that can help with succession planning, so that Young people today know that a family farm is a way to continue to business and can continue to support families and our province in years to come. And the Ontario Liberals would certainly, again, through consultation, work with the agricultural community to develop something like that.
Thank you, Kathy. Catherine?
Thank you. We need to invest in rural communities. The NDP believes we need to invest far more than the Ford government, which has been overlooking rural communities for at least the last 6 years, and indeed the Liberal government before started that trend. By investing in rural communities, I mean investing in rural infrastructure, healthcare, education, housing, and then specifically for young people in the farming communities, something like introduce a young farmers loan guarantee program that helps them break into the farming business, establish a food strategy that supports agricultural jobs in food processing, transportation, biofuels, retail. In other words, investing in rural communities that keeps them attractive and allows young people who want to stay here and break into farming to do so.
Thank you, Catherine. Steve?
Thank you. The Ontario PC government is promoting careers in the agriculture and food industry to attract and retain workers. To attract younger farmers, the government is working with Egscape and the agricultural societies throughout Ontario to promote careers. We're doing so by supporting the 4-H and launching Find Your Future to raise awareness to modern ag careers. We invested $343 million into the University of Guelph to further research and innovation in Ontario. Locally in Ridgetown, we have the University of Guelph there. And they have stated that for every graduate from their university, there's 5 jobs waiting for them. It is becoming a robust industry. We want to see family farms continue for generations to come. And I do agree with one of the previous speakers that we do have to get rid of this carbon tax because that is making it more challenging for existing farmers and for future farmers. Thank you.
Since we're going along so well, Teresa said we can do one more question. And I think it is a pretty good question. So we're going to start with Cynthia. What are the 3 most pressing issues facing Ontarians, and how would your government propose to address these issues?
Oh boy, minute and a half? Where do I begin? So I think education, freedom, immigration. So education, we need to bring back reading, writing, and arithmetic back into our classrooms, stop the crazy ideology being taught in the classrooms, parents as first educators. Teachers need to know their place and go back to teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic, so that's one. This woke World Economic Forum that's bringing this mass migration. We need responsible immigration to provide a future. We are actually, the people that founded Ontario and Canada, we're losing our ability to vote because we are bringing in so much immigration at record amounts that, you know, the people that founded this country are going to be losing their votes. And then also, I think, freedom. We need freedom in this country because freedom lets you actually live the life that you want to live, worship what you want to worship, teach your kids what you want to teach them, vote the way you want to. And I'll tell you, the legacy parties, they're, you know, most of them are involved in the World Economic Forum. They don't have Canada and they don't have Ontario at heart. So we need to try different things different parties that stand for Ontario and Canada and not World Economic Forum.
Thank you, Cynthia. Keith?
Yeah, that's a big question for a minute and a half, but I'll give it a shot. The three that I see are education, our natural resources, and healthcare. I'll leave healthcare to last. Education, I also agree that we need to get our public schools teaching the basics again so that when students graduate, they actually have the skills and the knowledge necessary to be able to continue learning throughout their life and also to get a good job. One thing I would add there is that, and the New Blue is very big on this, we might need to increase access as much as possible, facilitate access for the largest number of families possible to seek education for their children outside of the public school system. It would be ideal if every family could have that access if they so choose. I'm not saying everyone should choose it, but if they want to, fine. And there are ways to do that. We don't have time to talk about all those ways here. Natural resources, this is also a question of creating jobs for our youth. Ontario has massive amounts of natural resources that we have to facilitate access to and build mines and get people working on them and generate all those metals and other types of ore that we need for our industrialized society. And finally, healthcare. The main thing with healthcare is, as I said before, Ontario has got to impose its sovereignty by collecting more of its own taxes on its own soil so that we can properly fund our healthcare system.
Thanks, Keith. Kathy?
So then, I'm going to repeat what my colleagues have said here. This is a big question for a minute and a half, but certainly healthcare comes top of mind. We have to continue to defend our universally publicly funded healthcare. We cannot be putting dollars into private healthcare. We have to invest to ensure that we can see doctors in our own community, that we do not have to go to larger urban centers. We have to make sure that doctors want to practice their healthcare in our communities. We have to look after the people that look after us. We have to invest in our nurses, our nurse practitioners, our PSWs, our doctors. No more burnout when it comes to healthcare. And we have to make sure that primary care is available for all of us. So healthcare is definite number one. Housing. We definitely do need more housing, but it has to be done responsibly. It cannot be done on the backs of agricultural land. We have to look at building up and not out. We have to look at infill. We have to look at creative ways to house people to make sure that we are not taking away our valuable agricultural land. And I would say responsible planning, and that can hit a whole gamut of things. With my municipal hat on, the first thing that comes to mind is infrastructure. There has to be a continual investment, not only in new infrastructure, that's roads, bridges, wastewater and water systems, but it also means the maintenance of our rural road systems and our wastewater and water systems.
Thank you, Kathy. Catherine?
The top three issues I see, most pressing issues, healthcare, education, affordability, which includes housing. Healthcare, our funding of public healthcare is among the lowest in the country. And instead of addressing that, what happened under the Ford regime is at the beginning of COVID, Bill 124, which limited the ability of the nursing and healthcare staff to actually have free bargaining. This was found to be unconstitutional. So one thing we've got to do is restore that funding, the retroactive pay, and we need also to get family doctors to practice family medicine. We need to have integrated health teams that include administrators so that 40% of their time is not spent on paperwork. This is what the College of Family Doctors is recommending. I want to move quickly to education, and that is because K-12 and post-secondary, we are rock bottom in the country in terms of funding needs. We need more funding, more investment there. Affordability, the province needs to get back into building affordable housing.
Thank you, Catherine. Steve?
The priorities I see are education, healthcare, and cost of living. Education, the Ford government is making record investments in education. $15 billion in the rural area alone. Locally, we're building a new school in Lucan and Kamoka. During the time the Liberals were in 15 years, they closed 600 schools. The majority of them were in the rural area. We brought the curriculum back to the basics. Healthcare, we've invested since taking office $20 billion. We're building a hospital in Wallaceburg, and we're putting $3.7 million into the Strathroy Hospital. We are building hospitals all across Ontario. We built a medical school to train doctors to help with the doctor shortage. Cost of living. We have reduced childcare fees, saving low-income families $12,000 per year. We've reduced electric bills by $160 a year. We removed license plate stickers, saving the average family $240 a year. We reduced gas tax by 10 cents a liter. We're actively fighting the carbon tax. That alone is a major factor in cost of living for the cost of groceries, gasoline, heating your house, the very things we need every day. That's what we're doing to make life more affordable.
Thank you, Steve. Stephen? Show of hands, who's a farmer in here today? Right, none of you got a rebate on your stickers, did you? So, the regular people that live in a town got rebates on their stickers. The regular people that farm don't get rebates on stickers. But education, we're properly funded in every area. But what's happened is we've created this huge gap between the top of the people getting paid and the bottom of the people getting paid. So 1%, you get 1% through the board, but you keep on, that's a $1,000 raise at the top and a $100 raise at the bottom. It needs to be 1% and 3% for the bottom workers. And then we have administrative staff. Now this is ballooned out of control in the healthcare industry. We've seen people fired. They were making $7 million contracts, and then their buyout clause was another $5 million to get rid of these people, and then you had to hire another guy at $7 million. So we just lost $20 million on one person at LHSC. We need to. We're not a profit organization for our hospitals. We are privately funded. They're not supposed to be making money off of us. They should be balancing the money that's in there. These administrative positions need to be lowered and have a lowered standard. Maybe I don't know what it should be. Is maybe $1 million for these type of people, and it should be going back into the front healthcare workers. We also had 2,000 people are out of work because of COVID because they refused to take those shots. They're still out of work today. We don't have a hiring problem. We can rehire those people. Okay, so now we will move to, once Gary checks the camera, we'll move to closing arguments, and as I said at the start, they are 2 minutes, and we will go in reverse order of opening statements. So we'll start with Kathy.
Thank you for that. And once again, I just want to thank the OFA members for the opportunity to be here tonight, and again, thank the audience for being here and contributing the questions that you did. I think it's been a great discussion. So you really do have a big decision in front of you, and it's one that you cannot take lightly. I know the decision that I made that brought me to be sitting at this table tonight was one that took me some time to make. It was one that I did not come to lightly. But what really has enticed me to run for the Liberals is it is a party that is rebuilding, that has learned from past mistakes. And it's a party that is able to build a platform based on these kinds of conversations, where residents and organizations are consulted and are heard, where policy and representation is based on the needs and challenges and opportunities of communities like the ones that we all live in. Voting for me is not going to change the government. but electing me will give you representation that you haven't had for at least 6 months. Representation that will listen, that will talk with you, and have the important conversations to advocate for you and to be the voice that you need, to hold this government to account, because right now in Lambton-Kent-Middlesex, that is not happening. We have a new leader, a new candidate, and a new path forward, and I would be more than honored, I'd be humbled to be your representative in Queen's Park.
Thank you, Kathy. Keith?
I'll close with a couple of specific comments on fundamental conservative principles. Conservative principles do not allow for the gifting of tens of billions of taxpayers' dollars to multi-billion-dollar corporations. For instance, to build EV battery plants that any informed person knows for a fact will fail to deliver both the quantity of products and the number of jobs that are being promised. That failure is simply dictated by the law of supply and demand. I alluded to that earlier. I could tell you much more about it. Doug Ford's PCs did give those tens of billions of dollars, and that is not conservatism. That's something that's called corporatism. And that is corporatism that would make Benito Mussolini blush. My principles would never allow me to do as the PC candidate did in 2023 when he voted to dock his fellow municipal councillor 3 months of salary in order to satisfy the demands of the hysterical Marxist left. Well, what did Councillor Jubenville do that led the PC candidate to vote for her punishment? She expressed some opinions on social media that I wager every single person in this room, or nearly every single person in this room, would agree with. Think about that when you choose who to vote for. As your MPP, I will go to Queen's Park to defend the interests of the small town and agricultural communities of Lambton-Kent-Middlesex. I will be the fresh, independent voice that will say and do what needs to be said and done to set the stage for a renewal of common sense conservatism. And I very much look forward to serving you at the Legislative Assembly of Ontario. Thank you very much for coming out this evening.
Thank you, Keith. Cynthia?
So I'd like to thank everybody for coming out here tonight. It shows that you're passionate about your communities. We've been talking a lot about agriculture tonight, and there's other issues too that impact Lambton-Kent-Middlesex. I know the people of Lambton-Kent-Middlesex. They're salt of the earth. Farmers are above many salt of the earth. So I want to say this. Our freedoms are being eroded. Our premier is like a willow tree in the wind. He wavers with public opinion. He does not have the backbone to stand up to the feds. We are losing our freedoms every single day, and they are doing it slowly. We need to stand up to the feds. We need a leader that will stand up to the feds. My leader, Derek Sloan, has that capability. And I certainly will tell you, I'm a 52-year-old woman with no filter anymore. And so I will go to Queen's Park and I will represent you and I will tell them, this is what Lambton-Kent-Middlesex wants and needs. We have to bring Canadian values back. And this is the territory to do it. We need to bring back common sense to our curriculum in education. We need to cut unnecessary funding for things like hormone replacement therapy for children. We need to bring back common sense. Our values and morals are being eroded by the radical ideology of what's happening today. I could go on and on about what's happening, but let me tell you something. We are not just being governed by Canada and Ontario. We are being governed by the World Economic Forum. Make no mistake, and it's coming. The digital currency, Ford backs it. Ford backs so many things that promote what the feds want, and we need to stand up. The legacy parties have had their chance. Come back to a conservative person.
Stephen?
So if you can't tell, I'm a little angry tonight. Most of the topics I talk about, I'm not a politician. I do know the statistics, as most of the statistics, or I looked them up before this event today, and our GDP for this area was at 1.9 according to 2022. We need to reinvest in Lambton-Kent-Middlesex, like I said earlier. The jobs aren't there, the small family guy isn't there unless it's gonna be handed down. Like the Lutons just got rid of their land and the Taft are gonna take more land to work. So the bigger guys, local farmers are still working and everything, and McEachran's gave up their land and the local guys are still working, but you're just getting bigger farms and we've eroded that small market. Maybe need to go to hobby farms and things like that to get small guys back. But our quota system doesn't allow the hobby guys into the market much more now these days. So like, we need to get back into that hobby farming, get people back within the communities. Our grain mills are gone. Those were secure jobs that people had. We should have investment that the grain mills can't leave, and that's probably leading back to the carbon tax, and it's not being sustainable for those companies to run and dry your grain and get it to market. There's a whole industry in place, red tape that we can't get in, but those mills shouldn't be gone. When they had Cargill over in Melbourne, they said that one was way better than Strathroy, and then they tore that one down. And Melbourne is closed down now. And they said in 2011 it was a great facility, and now it's closed down. And St. Thomas is a great facility, and it's closed down. I heard there was a recent sale, but these things should not have gotten closed down in our region at all.
Thank you, Stephen. Steve?
Thank you everyone this evening for coming out, taking time out of your busy schedule. Once again, I'd like to take a moment to thank the local federations of agriculture, not only for organizing the events tonight, but for all the work you do in your communities. Our farmers feed the province. Our farmers are the backbones of every community in Lambton-Kent-Middlesex. Tonight, we've touched on many of the issues that we face in our agriculture communities and the riding as a whole. The Ontario PCs are the only party that support small town Ontario and farming communities. I'm proud of our track record of supporting our commodities and agri-food industry. We are the only party that cares about the concerns of rural Ontario. We are the only party fighting against Justin Trudeau's carbon tax. The University of Guelph has stated that for every graduate, there's 5 jobs waiting for them in the food industry. Under the Ontario PC government, we're going to make sure that each and every one of these graduates has a job in the food and agricultural sector. As your representative, I pledge to be your voice, advocate, and partner in building a brighter future for Lambton-Kent-Middlesex. I'm Steve Pinsino. A vote for me is a vote to keep getting things done in our community, and my track record as municipal councillor proves that. I would appreciate your support on May 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Catherine?
Thank you. Brooke-Alvinston is my home. I care deeply about it. The Ford government has totally ignored the pleas of county and municipal governments and run roughshod over their wishes, as in the disgusting case of the Dresden landfill expansion, which could in fact be shut down immediately by the Ford government if they so desired. It's past time for rural communities to have a stronger voice at Queen's Park. I want to channel my time, my energy, my experience into being that voice for you. If you've never before considered voting NDP and you're disappointed with what this PC government has brought you, this by-election is a golden opportunity to test out what an NDP representative and NDP policies can do for you. You won't be changing the government, but you'll be sending a strong message to the Ford government that you've had enough of being ignored, enough of taxpayer dollars being channeled into private health care and starving the public health care system, enough of overcrowded classrooms, and insufficient support for vulnerable students, enough of municipal funding cutbacks, enough of paved over prime agricultural land. There's a poster in my campaign office with a photo of Tommy Douglas, an early leader of the NDP and the founder of universal public health care in Canada. It quotes him as follows: "Take heart, people. There's still time to make the world a better place." Join me in making Lambton-Kent-Middlesex a better place. And thank you to everyone for your participation tonight, my fellow candidates, the moderator, everyone in the agricultural federations, and all of you who have come out tonight.
Thank you, Catherine. And I want to thank the candidates. The whole group of them were really good to work with to set this up. Sometimes that isn't the case, but them and their teams, a whole bunch of them, were all very good to work with. And I want to thank them for first stepping up and taking time out for the hope of going on to serve us even more in a bigger role. It takes a lot out of their own person and personality. And we, sorry, I get emotional because we take things for granted that other people in the world are dying to get. And so we got to thank ourselves especially. And there's 5 there, as long as Teresa doesn't beat you in the end.
Oh, stop.